Dear friends, welcome back to Bizards. This is Venkat here, and I welcome you all for Let's Learn It short and simple session. And today I'm going to talk about how we can prioritize user stories. One of the important responsibility of product owner in Agile project is to prioritize all the user stories based on whichever stories which is going to give maximum value to the customer, and the prioritization is otherwise called as backlog grooming or backlog pruning. Let's get into the session. So why to prioritize? Why there is a necessity for someone to for the product owner to prioritize? There are three compelling reasons. The very important thing is prioritization of user stories helps in delivering the highest business value to the customers, and it also helps in making a trade-off, especially when you have limited resources in terms of skill set, time, cost, and then it helps you to deliver minimum viable product. Sometimes people call minimum marketable features. And when we talk about the techniques that is available to help prioritization, primarily in this particular session, I'm going to talk about four techniques. One is prioritization using Moscow principle, then prioritization using value points, and we'll also see how to prioritize based on value versus risk matrix or value versus effort matrix. And finally, we will learn about Kano model. And let's start with Moscow technique. And if you see in Moscow technique, what essentially it tells us, you should be able to prioritize all the user stories into one of these four buckets: must have, should have, could have, and won't have. And you should spend all your best to satisfy all the must have as a number one priority, followed by should have. And both these must have and should have should combinedly should take 80% of your development effort. And the difference between must have and should have is must have are non-negotiable. This is something called minimum viable product, whereas should have is important but it's not vital. Maybe it may be painful to leave out, but the solution is still viable. And the third component could have is maybe something is nice to have. Maybe you can keep that as a contingency. You do that only if there is extra time and budget. And the last won't have is something you should try your best not to do, because that's not going to give maximum any value to the customers. So it is out of budget and it is not going to make any impact. So essentially all the user stories what you have in your product backlog, you should be able to classify based on must have, should have, could have, and won't have. That's all about Moscow technique. And coming to business value point, what essentially this technique talks about is, you have list of all user stories in the backlog, and the development team normally does what is called, we give a estimate using story points, using Fibonacci series. And in this particular example, I am having 4 user stories, and for each of the user stories I have given the story point. It is a relative size estimate. It is a unitless estimate. And when the development team is doing that, parallelly, the product owner gives he estimates what is called value point based on which user story is going to give maximum value to the end users. Whichever user story is going to give maximum value, I give the highest value. And normally how this estimation, or either it's story points or value point works is, you go through all the user stories. Whichever user story the team feels is very easy to implement in terms of complexity, in terms of size, in terms of uncertainty, you give the least value, maybe 1. And now you have a reference, and based on that you estimate all other user stories. And the same thing happens for value points. The product owner goes through all the user stories. whichever user story is least value to the customer, I give the minimum value, which is 1. And once the story point and value points are completed, you calculate the ratio, which is nothing but value point divided by story point. And then whichever ratio, whichever user story for which the ratio is I, that is the important priority. In this case, user story 4 is the first priority, followed by user story 2, then user story 3, and finally user story 1. That's essentially the prioritization using business value point. The third technique is basically how we can do prioritization based on value versus risk. What you're seeing here is I have a matrix where I have risk on one axis and value on the other axis, and both the value ranges from low to high. And if you see the you need to classify all the user stories into one of these four buckets, and the first priority should be for user stories which has high value, which is going to give high value to the customers, and the risk is also high. Sometimes people ask why we need to pick up high value and high risk. Why not high value and low risk? Remember, one of the important characteristics of Agile is fail fast. It is always important to pick up high value story points, high value users, high risk user stories first before picking up the low risk stories, because you can able to recover fast in case of failure. So you should do that first, followed by features which is going to give high value but as a low risk. And the third priority is features which is going to give low value and the risk is low. And this particular, the bucket where the value is low but the risk is high, you should try your best to avoid those user stories. Or in other words, we use the term trim the tail. These are all the features which is not going to add any value. You should do your best to not implement that. This is the first, the value versus risk technique. Yes, similar technique is you can also do based on value versus effort. So instead of risk, you can also replace by effort. And again, the degree varies from low to high for value, and then on the other axis, effort goes from high to low. Now, the first priority is whichever features which is going to give maximum value to the end users, but it's going to take low effort. You should do that first. Followed by maybe you can think about high value and the effort is high, or in other words, maybe it's going to give low value but the effort is also going to be low. And the thing you should try, the team should try avoiding, or the product owner should try avoiding, is features which is going to give low value to the end users but it is going to take high effort by the development team. So this is, you should try your best not to implement. The last prioritization technique is based on Kano Model. This was developed by Professor Noriaki Kano, and basically he classifies the customer preferences into 5 categories. And let me quickly explain each category. The first one is must be quality. And must be quality, or simply stated, these are the requirements that the customer expect and are taken for granted. And when done well, customers are just neutral. But when done poorly, customers are going to be very dissatisfied. That's why it is called must be quality. And the example is, for example, in a call center, greeting customers is a basic necessity. And the second, the category is one-dimensional quality. And these are all the attributes that result in satisfaction when fulfilled and dissatisfaction when not fulfilled. Again, in the example of call center, the time taken to resolve the issue. And the third category is attractive quality. And these attributes provide satisfaction when achieved fully, but do not cause dissatisfaction when not fulfilled. And these are attributes that are not normally expected. And in a call center, providing a special offers and compensations to customers or proactive escalation and instant resolution of their issue is an attractive feature. The fourth category is indifferent quality. These attributes refer to aspects that are neither good nor bad, and they do not result in either customer satisfaction or customer dissatisfaction. And in a call center example, highly polite speaking and very prompt responses might not be necessary to satisfy customers and might not be appreciated by them. The last category is reverse quality, and these attributes refer to high degree of achievement resulting in dissatisfaction and to the fact that not all customers are alike. Uh, Again, in the call center example, using lot of jargons, using excessive pleasantries or using excessive scripts while talking to customer might be putting them off. So now when you want to map this with respect to the other prioritization techniques, you should focus on must be quality, one dimensional quality, or the top two followed by attractive quality. The indifferent quality and reverse quality you should, only if time permits you do indifferent quality, and reverse quality you should, just avoid it. And one of the key characteristics of Kano model is these attributes, whatever we classify, these tend to change, drift over time because it's based on the customer priorities and the competitor, offerings. And also, Kanu proposes a very standardized questionnaire to measure the participants' opinions, in a very implicit way. So all these has to be, surveyed, and based on that, the product owner should able to, classify whether it is a must-be quality or one-dimensional or attractive or indifferent or reverse quality. So with this, I am ending this session. Please do visit our website, bizarres.in for additional details. And please, if you like, share to your friends and colleagues and subscribe and look for other more videos. And thank you for watching and good luck to you all. Bye.